Hello, everyone.
Hi, good evening. Hi, Hannah.
Hey, Dr. Ojo Karens.
How you doing?
I'm good. I'm
Happy
good. Glad to be here.
Wednesday.
How you doing?
Doing good. Thank you for asking. Happy Wednesday to you.
And to you and to everyone who's here with us. We're calm. We are not in an overly excited manner because tonight is not a very exciting. It's a somber thing that we're talking about. That's
Mhm. Yeah, we're discussing domestic violence. Um, this month is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, also known as domestic abuse, intimate partner violence. And, I was sharing with you earlier that I've been nervous to have this discussion because it is so deep. It does touch many women. And I don't want to leave this time together without giving it its due uh, justice and making sure we get across what we want to get across to those who are viewing. Um, and take into account all aspects, but there is a lot to talk about. It is really deep. We only have so much time that we're going to spend, but we really want to try and get things across. So hope we're able to really reach those who need to hear this tonight.
And that may not necessarily only be people who are in a domestic violence situation. That might be the people who are on the periphery of that
Mhm.
situation who might be able to help. I was really shocked when we were preparing for this that 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men have been a
Mhm.
victim of physical violence by an
Mhm.
intimate partner in their lifetime.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. An estimated 4.8 million incidences of physical violence or sexual assault occurs in the U.S. annually. Um, and that number is underreported because a lot of uh, people that experience this type of abuse are hesitant to come forward and be counted in those statistics. So, and I'm glad that you said men and women because it's both. You don't have to be, this is not um, something that only affects women. Women are the dominant uh, class of people that are affected by abuse and are the abused, but definitely men can be um, victims, um, and so it affects both men and women. Um, it's significant. Honestly, it's also preventable. It is a public health issue, and so something that needs to be addressed often. So we'll focus mainly on how it affects women. And in our terminology and discussion tonight, we're going to use identifiers that are more female as we talk about this.
And I'm just going to have the hotline number scroll across the bottom. So if you're catching this, that'll be there throughout. Yeah. So, and it's also something that is cyclical, right? So
Mhm.
it's can be repeated for the children that are growing up in those environments
Yeah.
and learning that way. So it's important for so many reasons to stop it. I think recently I heard in the news that it was just made big headlines about an assault that happened on a train, and apparently no one on the train called to stop. No one intervened
Mhm.
to stop the attack. And so I think about that as a metaphor for being aware of how the people in your community and how the people in your circle are doing.
Yeah.
And I know that there can be a fear for messing up someone's life if you don't, or you don't want to get in their business or anything like that. But if you are the person who might be able to make a difference.
Well, and the thing about abuse is that it can escalate. There are phases of abuse. Phase one, and like you use the word cyclical, where there's an increase in tension, threats of violence. Phase two, where the abuser actually becomes physically violent. Phase three, usually is when there's that apologetic state. The abuser expresses guilt. even blames the person that they're victimizing for being abused. That phase shortens over time, and the cycle becomes more of the violence, and so that violence can escalate to death. And that's why it's important for those that are victims to speak out and seek help, but also if you're able to intervene in a way that keeps that person that's being abused safe, it's really necessary to do so. Abuse can be actual and it can be threatened. And any form of abuse can come along with physical force. And when we're talking about intimate partner violence, there are different forms: physical, so being battered, sexual, psychological, even reproductive coercion. And so we don't necessarily always think about it in those different categories. And just because we're categorizing them doesn't mean that a person can't experience more than one. But there are different categories. And I, even sometimes forget the reproductive coercion, where the partner or the one that is abusing may prevent the victim from having birth control. May prevent them from using condoms during sex to prevent STDs, may purposely expose them to an STD. That is a form of abuse.
Mm-hmm.
So it's important to remember that someone can experience one or all forms. There are multiple ways abusers try to take control, and I think sometimes we as women may view control as love, but it's not. It is someone trying to do that, just control you and control your narrative. So interfering with you being able to go to places, or you having access to money, food, you having relationships with people outside of that intimate relationship. Those are ways in which an abuser can control. Monitoring your cell phone use or your emails or your text messages, that's not control out of love. That can be control out of abuse. And so helping special populations of people to even understand that, young people, especially the adolescents who use social media to converse with one another often, helping them to understand, hey, it's not control out of love. It is a form of abuse.
I love that you're delineating these things, because it's really helpful to hear things read out in a list of things to be aware of, or red flag moments, because, there is a lot of generational hand-me-downs of norms that everyone gets, no
Yeah.
matter who they are, where they're coming from. And so to be able to just see a cold, hard fact sheet of these are things that might signal that you're in a relationship that's not healthy, that you may need to, find an out. I think it's nice to have those delineated.
Yeah. And abuse in a relationship can increase in certain times, times of stress in a relationship. During pregnancy, there is a lot of abuse that starts or can get worse during pregnancy. That poses physical dangers to the woman and her pregnancy. I was reading an article that while we were, while researching for this, and in the article, they were describing some women who have less abuse during pregnancy may try to use pregnancy, or inadvertently use pregnancy as a state for protection. So have multiple pregnancies because during that time with their partner, they receive less abuse. So being aware of what's happening to you in different times, or even your friends or those that are around you, I think is necessary. Abuse can affect women in multiple ways, especially if you're a friend looking outside in, a friend that has repeated headaches, pelvic pain. That can result from different types of abuse, obviously. For in pregnancy, stillbirth, injury to the fetus, preterm delivery because of physical abuse. All these things are possible. And you were alluding to earlier, children that are that experience abuse as viewers. They're in the home where there is abuse. They can go on to have um, longstanding issues because of that exposure: PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, chronic headaches, stomach problems, all originating from their exposure.
We've got some people who are joining us tonight. Thanks, you guys, for being here and for checking in with us. Feel free to always send us a private comment if you'd like to, direct message if you need to. We'd love to answer any questions or point you in the direction of someone who might be more expert than we. I'm going to now switch over to the phone number for if you, did I do it?
Yeah, so there.
There we go.
And so, you were talking about some lists. So here's some other things to just be aware of. How can I tell if my partner's abusive? We were talking about the difference between control and love. Does your partner ever frighten you with threats of violence by throwing things or getting angry? Does your partner ever say it's your fault that you were hit? Does your partner ever promise not to do or to exhibit that same type of behavior again? Does your partner put you down in public? Prevent you from contacting family or friends? Does your partner ever force you to have sex or, things we talked about before? Prevent you from access to those things that you want to protect you, condoms or contraception? These are signs that you may be involved in an abusive relationship. Something to also consider when you're talking to your friends, signs that they may be involved in an abusive relationship. And so the first step of breaking the pattern is talking to someone. And whether it's a friend or a family member, someone you trust, your physician. And this is a call to all physicians also. It is our responsibility as physicians to be a resource for our patients that are being abused. Other populations of special populations that oftentimes receive abuse, elderly. There is, elderly abuse. And so it's our responsibility to be that refuge for them. As an OBGYN, I have a unique relationship with my patients, one that we've talked about before that can be very intimate. And so it's important that I be open and I be accessible to my patients. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services recommends that in every wellness visit, in every OB visit, that an intimate partner relationship violence screening be done. And so that is to, one, provide access to those patients that are unfortunately experiencing abuse, but also to increase awareness. And to make that person more comfortable in telling their truth by asking them, by presenting that invitation. And so this is a call to all healthcare providers that are watching. That's something that we should be discussing in our visits with our patients, both male and female.
I love that because I think, if you are in a situation like this, then you might not be able to think in your most rational way. It's probably a very difficult subject to bring up. So if you are screened for and asked about it specifically, that provides a gateway to be able to enter into a conversation about it. I've been thinking about also just teaching our children. You brought up just what we can teach our children to look out for. And I've been teaching them about our country's history and some of the really ugly bits. And it's really sad sometimes when you teach your kids about things in the world that are not beautiful, that are scary or that are, they need to know. But I keep coming back to the point that we're learning about this so that we don't repeat it.
Yeah.
And so I think the importance of looking at this is not just for people who are in that situation, not just for people who know someone who's in that situation, but to pass on healthy relationship ways. And here is what unhealthy relationship ways, how they manifest.
Yeah, emotional intelligence is taught, and it's our responsibility as parents to teach our children how to cope. And there are two parties in this type of relationship. There is the person that's being abused, and then there is the abuser. And we talked about a bit earlier, children that are in environments where abuse occurs. Well, those children also have a high rate of going on to abuse others.
Mm-hmm.
And so breaking that cycle can start early with education and what teaching what a healthy relationship is like on both ends.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, yeah, that's very important. It's very important.
This is making me think of an idea for another Wednesday Night Live. And maybe I should save it, but maybe if anyone's listening, you can tell us if you're interested or not. But I remember that there was a fingernail polish that was invented. So if you were at a bar, you could dip your fingernail into the drink and it would change colors if there was a roofie. So this is kind of tangential because it's not necessarily domestic, violence with an already intimate partner, but in terms of safety for people who are out in public, that kind of thing, could be another if we have interest.
And this takes me right into what I wanted to talk about next, how to leave, and once you decide to leave, what to do. How to leave, make your plan. You can contact a local domestic violence shelter, ask about laws and resources in your area, keep evidence of abuse, because that could be useful later. Set aside money that you would give to maybe your friends or put in the bank so that you have access to it after you leave. And here's where I make that connection with what you were talking about before. Keeping an environment of safety around those that we know. Once you decide to leave, you want to leave in a safe way. And so asking someone to be present would be helpful because that's a party that can help ensure your safety, but also who you're asking is very critical. And this one article I read said, ask a police officer to be there while you leave. I think that's a very good idea, especially if you're leaving in such a way that you're afraid that you may be pulled back in or caught or held with against your will. A police officer would give you a level of safety on while you're leaving. Pack clothes and store those clothes outside of your home so you have access to them. Keep important documents, at least a copy or access to it somehow so you have access. Medical records, birth certificates, a list of bank accounts that you may share with your partner so that you have ready access to it. So I think these are all good pieces of advice. And then this wonderful hotline that we're putting up here that has so much information. There are many languages that are spoken on the hotline, so it's can be accessed by many people. They also help with legal advice too, and give you access to that, especially for those who are in relationships in which they're married and they want to leave that also. So I think tonight I'm so happy that we were able to talk about this. This is a heavy topic, but one that definitely we need to share amongst ourselves and our friends and to keep awareness.
I think that the main thing that I would love to put out around this topic is just that there is life after, there is hope for something else, and there is an escape, and there is a route towards something healthier. So we're starting with that number below, but if you have any follow-up questions or anything you'd like to toss our way, please send us a direct message. We've had a lot of people here in the comments saying that they'd had conversations with you and that they appreciate this conversation. So thank you everyone for being here and for joining us for this. And thank you so much, Dr. Ojo Cairns, for all those tips.
Thank you. Thank you, Hannah. Thank you, everyone.